Hello again, this is Jace Fugate with another session of the Introduction to the Go Programming Language course. And so we're going to continue our discussion with functions. This is going to be our last video on functions. And so what we are going to be talking about today is this little guy right here, this little underbar or underscore, whatever it is that you want to call it. This is a blank return, or this is just a way that you actually ignore a return variable or return value from a function. So this is the same example that we've been using the past 3 or 4 videos. And it has two return variables, two return values. But in this case, we only care about this return value. We only care about the first return value. Because if you remember in Go, if you create a variable but then don't use it, it'll get mad at you. It'll say, hey, you're wasting this. So what you do to fix this is you put an underbar. And that makes it so that you don't instantiate a second variable. You're only instantiating the first variable and taking the value from the first return and keeping it to use later on in your program. You can do this for either. You can do it for the first or for the second. That works just fine. It'll get mad at here because I don't have the instantiation of change. But you can't do both. If you do both, it'll yell at you and say, there's no new variables here. This would be the same as doing this. And this is what you should do instead. If you want to completely ignore the variables or the return values, you just don't have it equal anything. But if you only want one, again, as we had it set up in the beginning, you just do that. This can be very helpful. One thing that I use it a lot for is when I'm just kind of writing a quick script, is I'll actually ignore the error, because a lot of times you'll have like that error here on the end. So I want the first two. I'm just going to call it a for variable, and then I'll ignore the error just because I'm testing. But keep in mind, don't ignore errors in production code. That is bad. But it's something that I use a lot just as I'm running through code, and I want to just say, hey, I'm just looking at this one variable. Let's run through it. Let's run through this code, but just look at this one variable, or ignore this piece here and there. And so there you have it. That is blank returns. I appreciate you being here, and we'll see you again.